Remember the days when Harvest Moon games were good? Farming, romance, more farming. Do you remember how wonderful that was? Oh no! What is that? Oh no! Get it away from me! Oh my gosh, they're everywhere! Guys, we gotta talk. What the heck were they thinking when they made this? Guys, this game is terrible. Not just terrible. Terrible. Oh my gosh. Getting a headache just thinking about it. Oh Lord. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nini Gabriella, and today I'm talking about the terribleness of whatever the heck this is. I'm getting sick. I'm getting physically sick thinking about how bad this game is. As you might already know, I've made a video talking about the best Harvest Moon games and the worst Harvest Moon games. I love Harvest Moon games, and I feel like I've said that way too many times. But the thing is that I have been deceived. Someone looked at little old me and said, you know what? I'm gonna ruin her day by making her think this was ever a Harvest Moon game. This technically isn't a Harvest Moon game. But you see this little thing in the corner right here? The family of Harvest Moon. So when I saw this, you know, little old me, little small me, walking from my house to my local GameStop, going like, oh my gosh, Harvest Moon. Then I picked up this game, put it in my little pocket, went back home, played it for 2 hours, then said to my dad, we must sell this game on eBay because this was the worst thing I've ever played. So like I said, the worst Harvest Moon games. I talked about this game quite briefly, but I wanted to do a deep dive of this game because this game is just terrible. And I felt like it would be a bit unfair for me to rank it as the worst Harvest Moon game, considering that technically it isn't part of the Harvest Moon franchise. But today we're getting into full detail about it and just how bad this game actually is. But before we get into today's video, if you like today's video, I would really hope it if you like and subscribe. My goal is to get to 5,000 subs before the end of the year, and I don't know when this video is releasing, but I'm hoping that we are super close to that goal. I'm really striving for 5,000 subs this year, and if you want to be part of my little team, I'd love it if you'd join. Also, I have just recently released an Etsy store, so if you'd like to support me further, I'd hope it if you'd check it out in the description, as I just made some beautiful stickers, and they're super cute. So please check out my store and subscribe. Now, let's get into the video. Okay guys, let's get into this because like I said earlier, we do have a lot to talk about. So Hometown Story, it's a life simulation game that was developed by Toybox Inc. and was later published by Natsume in 2013. It was designed by Yasuhiro Wada, the creator of Harvest Moon series, which is why it was marketed as, you know, the spiritual successor to those Harvest Moon games. The game was released on Nintendo 3DS and on iOS, and today we're going to try to deep dive into the game and talk a little bit of why it just kind of flopped. So let's get into the story. In Hometown Story, players inherit a small, rundown shop from their grandmother, who recently passed away. The goal of the game is to try to turn the shop into a successful business by stocking up and selling items. Unlike in Harvest Moon, there's no farming mechanics, which to me feels like a major letdown. You can't farm in this game. Like a Harvest Moon game, a supposed Harvest Moon game, that you can't farm in? Make it make sense. But instead you just interact with NPCs, restock shelves, and gradually just upgrade your shop. You can find little items and things around the village that you live in to help restock your store. But what many people don't know is that while the game was still in production, the game was actually referred to as Project Happiness. Wada explained that the player would be questioned at the end of the game what is happiness to them, and they would have a choice of 7 wishes that they could choose from, though the game was later changed to, well, I guess Hometown Story. But Wada goes on to explain that the original concept of the story is still kind of there. 6 of wishes can be used to bring happiness to others, and the 7th is of your own happiness, which is basically why you interact with the NPCs a lot in the game and try to fulfill their wishes. But in this game, you can only choose from 2 of these paths. He kind of continues to explain that he changed the ideas of the game to make the player kind of question whether it was to bring happiness to others or to have their own happiness. When you really think about it, it's kind of like an interesting concept of a game, trying to decide between the happiness of fulfilling wishes for other people or fulfilling your own wishes. While I like the concept of the story, I don't necessarily feel like that is what we kind of got out of the game. Now, we will be talking about some spoilers in this game, so let me just say that when we get to some of those spoilers, I will try to stop, so then if you do feel like playing this game for yourself, I won't have to spoil everything for you, but I can't guarantee that I might not share something that you might not already know, so just buckle up and be prepared for the ride. Now, let's get into it. So you know a little bit about the game. Basically, you run a shop and you help people fulfill their dreams and wishes, okay? But like, what else is there really to do in the game? And that's where I don't really have a lot to say. So in this game, you're supposed to be focused mainly on the villagers, but they're ultimately a little bit bland, and the world itself, there isn't really much to do in it. The hometown story town is meant to grow as the player's shop becomes more successful. There's about 100 NPCs in the game, but honestly, most of them just kind of lack depth. There are 3 bachelors and 3 bachelorettes that you can choose from to marry, but to be honest, it's almost like there isn't really even a point to do so. On top of there being a variety of townsfolk that you can get to know as you continue the story, and some magical characters along with that. There's just so much to unpack, guys. Honestly, I feel like I'm just feeling overwhelmed with how much I could share about my disappointment with this game, so let me just try to break it down into some points. So let's just start with the story. So one of my biggest critiques about this game is the story. So throughout the game, the player is occasionally reminded about their late grandmother who left them this shop, and as you progress, you'll discover more about her life in the village and the relationships that she had with the townspeople. The shop itself serves as a symbol of her legacy, and the player is meant to bring it back, and this kind of coincides with the main story point of helping the villagers with their personal wishes. These wishes are the core parts of the narrative progression, but at the heart of all of this, there's this weird sort of glowing tree that is in the middle of town, and the tree is linked to the townspeople's hopes and dreams, and as you help fulfill their wishes, your ultimate goal is to fulfill this final wish, which is connected to the tree. But the game doesn't really make this very clear. The story reveals that that granting the final wish will bring resolution to the villagers' past and ultimately to your grandmother's spirit. But you don't really find out about this until way later on in the game. And to be honest, the wishes often lack sort of like a meaningful context, and the game doesn't really guide the players on how to really complete them. A lot of the wishes are linked to sort of random interactions, basically just walking around doing your everyday stuff, so you don't really know how to trigger when you're getting a fulfilling wish and when it's actually supposed to take place. There's so many times in this game where I just felt like, what the heck am I supposed to be doing? If you kind of take out the parts of the game, I guess, where you're not necessarily focusing on the main story, I can see someone playing this game just to sort of play it. You run a shop, you talk to people on an occasion, and you can sort of build a romantic connection with someone, and I say sort of very lightly because there's not too many opportunities to do so. But overall, if you are trying to complete the final story of the game, you kind of just don't know how to go about it. Which also brings me to my next point about these character-specific events. Some characters have unique storylines that trigger special events when certain conditions are met. For example, if you help a specific villager enough, you unlock these mini cutscenes or story events relating to their personal goals. But these events are really scattered and are honestly difficult to trigger because you don't really know what the requirements were to actually have met them. The story is just really random and it's just poorly explained. Like, if I have to compare this to like an actual Harvest Moon game, lots of the events and things that happen in Harvest Moon are all connected to some sort of other bigger meaningful picture. And you're guided to get to that sort of end goal, whereas in this game you don't really know what the end goal really is. Like, it's just not a Harvest Moon game. My next critiques really focus around 1, the mechanics of the game, and 2, just what you're doing in the game. Firstly, it really frustrates me in games like this because you are left with this repetitive notion to do something over and over and over again, but in this game you're doing it over and over again with no real goal. You're not sure when you're going to be able to get a shop upgrade. You don't know why you're helping this random stranger. Why am I doing all of this extra things just so I can go back and do it all over again tomorrow? It really makes you think like, wow, I'm just living actual life. I don't play games to live life unless I want to play The Sims, and even that's a little chaotic. While this game does have some sort of like little events here and there, there's no sort of seasonal events happening in the game. There isn't a fall, a spring, a winter. It's just day after day after day. You're living a sad, endless cycle of just trying to get your shop afloat. In Harvest Moon, I would look forward to the changing of the seasons. In this game, I can't really tell one day from the other day. And while it is part of the Harvest Moon family function, I want to say this is a game I really feel like they could have used the farming element to their advantage. Imagine being able to run your shop on top of being able to grow a farm. Like, it's just a classic Harvest Moon trope that they really could have just added in here. They have everything else. You have the dead grandmother and whatever else, and you're running her shop, but like in this instance, they could have used a farm or animal care so you can sell your products. Really, when it comes to selling products in this game, you have to forage for them. So you go out every single day, which wastes time from being in your store to go bring back those items to your shop. It's different from like Harvest Moon My Little Shop. It's just a shop that you can't have any fun in. I think I was just really disappointed because I think I loved the idea of Harvest Moon implementing a shop in a game, because I think that would be kind of cool to have your own store on top of being able to run your farm. It just adds a more modern touch to it, and I think they just bit off too much. You know, 2013, I think I was about, 12 or 11 when this game came out. I was like, oh, I'm gonna run a shop and a farm, yay! But instead I'm just running a shop and I started to hate it. Adding to this a little bit, the graphics of this game, they do adopt a really cute chibi art style. I will say that is a positive side of this game. The visuals of the game look good for it being something coming out on the 3DS. But as far as color contrast, I do believe it's a bit dull. Like, the whole area has this almost eerie feeling to it, along with the music as well. Like, the same music plays over and over and over again in the shop. Another thing I hated was just the camera angles. You aren't able to freely change your camera angles in this game, which is something I can enjoy at times, but in this instance I really disliked it because there was just some things I wanted to grab or to touch and I couldn't reach them because it's like I couldn't see them. You have such a big map, yet there's nothing in it, on top of the fact you can't see it all because you can't change your camera angles. You would think the music at least would be kind of good. The man who composed this was actually famous for the Final Fantasy series, but I'm telling you, like, just listen to a little bit here. Imagine listening to that every time the store opens on repeat. Okay, we broke that down a little bit. Let's get a little deeper into the story, okay? Now we're getting to some things I really disliked. Moving back onto the characters. Now, like I said earlier, I felt like the characters were a little bland. But there's one scene in particular, and this is a big spoiler for those, but there's one scene that just really grinds my gears, because why would they even put this in a game? Just why? Literally, why? A lot of the events that happen in the game are kind of just random and can be triggered by, honestly, you don't even know. There's a lot of like shock factor into some of these events. The one I'm about to say right now is the one that I think shocked me the most, as there's this scene where there's a death of a child in the game. Like, Harvest Moon always has like one death in the game, and yeah, it's a very sentimental moment, but killing off a child? Are you kidding me? Like, I wish you guys could see my face right now because I'm recording this after I had made the intro, but I'm telling you, that really just threw me for a loop. You find out some characters that you thought were nice were actually evil. The children that you thought were very just children are going to end up being victims of falling off cliffs. And even with all of that, it still feels underdeveloped. This scene is supposed to be touching and it's supposed to be a bit emotional, but it really just comes out of nowhere. This death is supposed to be linked to the game's larger themes of fulfilling wishes and moving on from the past, and his past leaves a mark on the town, I guess. But it's underexplored in regards to it just appearing out of nowhere. Most of the characters are just kind of like, wow, well, that just happened. a character that was full of joy and was supposed to have these whimsical tones and themes of the game just kind of passes, and then you move on to running your shop the next day. I just feel like if they were going to create a game where you were going to learn about each personal character, I feel like the themes surrounding them should be a little more in depth. While you are tasked with fulfilling their wishes a little bit here and there, it's overall just very lackluster and a bit random. And if I'm being completely honest, the characters don't really give you that opportunity to have those close interactions with them unless it's on their own will of the random times they come into your shop. To me, it feels like you as a character don't really have a say or a choice in how all of this plays out, and you're just another character in the hometown story. Now, let's get to kind of the ending of the game. Again, these are going to be some spoilers as I'm going to talk about what happens at the end of the game. After doing a series of random events and doing things to grant other people's wishes, the mysterious tree finally blooms after the final wish is granted, and the spirit of the grandmother appears, expressing her pride in the protagonist for reviving the shop and the town. The villagers thank you, and they're all excited, and then that's it. You just go back to restocking the store the next day. I think the reason why I'm so frustrated about the ending is really for the fact that it has almost like a slow buildup. As you start learning more and more about the story of the game, you get to the point where when you finally get there, you're like, wow, great. So what's next? It's not fulfilling enough for you to feel like it's the true ending of the game. And the worst part about it is that running the shop in general is just so boring that even getting to the ending, knowing that all you get to do after is continue to run the shop, it just fills me with more and more disappointment. You're telling me I spent an entire game looking for these wishes for people that I don't really care about just to go back to living my sad life. Now, here's the funny part though. There's actually two endings of the game. If the player doesn't successfully fulfill enough wishes or fails to complete the story objectives, which you barely know what they are, you basically get what might be the bad ending or the true ending, whatever you want to call it. What happens is that, well, the tree just remains dull. The spirit of the grandmother doesn't appear, none of the town folk thank you during the event, and there's no major celebration or conclusion to the villagers' personal stories, which the director put in as another choice, as in you had made the choice to fulfill your own wishes, I guess, as opposed to helping others. But if I'm being completely honest, it's almost easier to get a bad ending than there is to get the more fulfilling ending, because some of the objectives to even get this better ending is kind of unclear. I look at the good ending as almost the hard ending, because it's kind of hard to figure out how to fulfill all 7 wishes, and within the time constraints. And knowing that at that point you kind of get to know the characters a little bit, it almost feels a bit heartbreaking knowing that at the end you couldn't fulfill all the wishes just because you didn't know what to do. Honestly, it just feels like the game really stresses you out, because while I personally didn't love all of the characters, you do develop a little bit of a relationship with them the more they come into your store and the more they tell you about their stories. And then at the end, to just not being able to do one person's wish just to get this bad ending where everyone's upset with you, it's like, come on, man, I really tried. I really did, man. I really freaking tried. I put it this way, I like the idea of this concept of there being 2 different endings in which you choose your own happiness or someone else's. But if they were going to go with that trope, I wish they would have expanded on it a little bit. Not only is it confusing to try to figure out how to make everybody happy, but in another sense, how am I making myself happy in the game as well? Because in the end, while I guess that's the ending of choosing your own happiness, it really doesn't feel like it if everybody's just mad at you. You let your nana down, you let the town down, and I guess you let yourself down, only to again just finish the game with running the shop on endless mode. This is another opportunity where I said they could have used the farming mechanics, they could have gone more in depth with marriage, and I'm not going to go too in depth on that at this point in time because I think I've ranted about this so much, but even the marriage components in the game feel very just useless and lifeless. I'm not sure if they were rushing, but I feel like there's so much room for growth within this game, and I would really like to see this game come back, but I would just like to see it come back better. Like, I know Harvest Moon games will probably never be the same after the split between the companies, And with the amount of really good indie games out there right now, I definitely think this game has missed an opportunity. With too much repetitiveness, the bland characters and the weird story, the lack of meaningful gameplay, the shop management mechanics, there's just so much that I was really disappointed with this game. With the ratings of it being only a 47 out of 100, this for me was 2 thumbs down. While I'm probably not ever going to talk about this game again unless, I don't know, something else comes up, I will say on a more positive note, after picking this game up again just to talk about it more within this YouTube video, I think this game can be fun to play just mindlessly. Similarly to how I talked about Fashion Dreamer, which was the last video I had just put out, I did note that while I didn't enjoy the game, I think this is a great game if you are just looking to play something in the background with while maybe watching TV or having something else going on. I think it is a great game for that. As far as what I was expecting out of the game in terms of it relating to the Harvest Moon series or wanting some farming and stuff, that's where I think it really disappointed me. There are some things to enjoy about this game, and while I didn't touch on them a lot in this video, I will say if you're just looking for something simple, wanting to run a little shop, maybe not caring too much about how the story ends in the end, I think this game can have some charm in it. But again, speaking negatively, I found myself putting it down after just a couple weeks of playing. The way I love crappy reality television is the same way I can say I do find a little bit of love of playing a not so good game every once in a while. I'd say if you want to know more about this game, check it out, but don't get your hopes up. While I don't think I'm going to touch on this game too much more in the future, leave me any comments down below in the future if there's anything you'd like me to retouch on when it came to this game, or if you know a similar game and would like me to do a comparison, let me know down below in the comments. I'd say if you could find this game for $5 on eBay, I'd say give it a go. Any more than that, I highly would not recommend. So guys, what do you guys think of Hometown Story? Do you feel similarly as I do about this game? But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you felt similarly or had a similar experience to I did about this video game, please write down your stories in the comment because I want to know. I really want to know how you guys felt about this. I want to know how you guys think about today's video, and let me know down below in the comments what you think I should talk about next. Because I know this isn't the only strange Harvest Moon game in the franchise, okay? Because I mean, we talked about Miss One World at one point in time. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye-bye. Bye.